Okay, so I'm set up with the different groups, equipments. I have things labeled with group numbers on them. So I'm gonna go through this mixture separation lab and show you some of the pieces. Group 3 wanted to sift first, so I have a sieve here. Notice that there are different, oops, there we go, sized screens, and we're gonna stack them up from the largest to the smallest so that they will sort by size. We've got just a plain container for the bottom, and we will pour all of that in and gently shake. And then you'll see that at each layer, different sized portions get left behind. And after the first two screens, that's all of the larger perlites. Maybe some of the iron sticks, so we'll check it, but then we get down to that's just the iron, the salt, and the sand. So we're gonna put that in a separate dish. And we're gonna try to even get the little fine stuff down at the bottom. Group 8 had a slightly different procedure, so instead of starting with sifting, they want to start with getting the iron filings out. So I'm going to demo that for you really quick. I have bar magnets in bags, and I'm leaving them in bags for a reason. So I'm going to show you that reason in just a sec. Okay, so here's my mixture. And if I were to just put the bar magnet on like groups have in the past, because they don't listen, you see that there's iron filings stuck to it. It's really hard to get them off. So instead, we are going to leave the magnet in the plastic bag. And then the iron filings will be stuck to the outside of the bag. And when I'm going to switch dishes here, pull the magnet away from the bag, the iron filings will drop off. Now it's not perfect, so I might go through my iron filings a couple of times, but that's basically the procedure that I'll use. Starting on groups 8, and then I will sift it, and starting on the pre-sifted sand, salt, and iron filings. And I shall return when that work is done. Okay, so group 3 is down to salt and sand. Period 4, also down to salt and sand. And then period 8 had a different technique for getting the perlite out that I thought I would try this year. So they have salt, sand, and perlite still, and so we'll get to that in just a second. All 3 of them are going to get water added to them. So for 3 and 4, we will be dissolving the salt because salt is soluble and sand isn't. And in number 8, we're not only going to be dissolving the salt, but we will also be separating the perlite based on its density. So I'm going to try to add enough water that I'm sure all of the salt will dissolve, but not so much that I'm going to be filtering for hours here. So we'll use a stirring rod and stir that. Take a look. It just looks like muddy water right now, but we'll give the salt a little time to dissolve in all 3 of them, and then I'll be back to filter. So for period 8, we're using density to separate the perlite. So that means we can't mass our perlite right away, but we can, because it's floating, scoop out the perlite, put it in its own dish, and then when it's dry tomorrow, and I'll make sure I get all these little pieces that are, because I'm talking and doing this at the same time, I'll get all those pieces. I'll make sure I get all of the little ones, and then when it's dry tomorrow, we'll mass it. So we're ready to filter, and I have masked the filter paper for each group and marked them with permanent marker. And so remember to filter. We're going to fold this in half and then fold it into quarters, and then that will open up into a cone that fits in the funnel. We get the paper to sit into the funnel well by using a little bit of water from our wash bottle. We're already using water in our solution anyways, so it's just adding a little bit more. It's gonna filter, so we're gonna make sure that we've stirred this well, and we're gonna start pouring into the filter paper. I'm not gonna worry about getting the solids off of the bottom yet, but I am gonna worry about making sure I don't go over the top of the filter paper. So some observations I'm making, I see little teeny tiny pieces of perlite floating on group 4s, and I don't see many of those on group 8s. I see the same little tiny pieces of perlite in period 3s. So I'm going to pause you guys again, because you don't need to watch all of these filter, and we'll be back with the results. So once you get down to the bottom where you just have that kind of stuff stuck at the bottom, rather than trying to stir that or scrape that out with a stir rod, we can use our wash bottle, and we can just, again, we've already used water, so we're just going to use a little extra water and try and wash as much of that out and into our funnel as we can. I'm going to try to get all of the edges, and I'll do that for all 3. And again, we'll come back with the final results. So here we can carefully pull out our filter paper. Still just a little damp, but there is our sand, and we're just going to put it in a weighing dish to dry. Set that aside. I pre-masked beakers. So I'm going to, now we have salt water, and you can observe it. It's not, whoops, yeah, you can observe it. Not exactly perfectly clear, none of them are, but we're not refining here, we're just doing a rough separating. So I'm going to pour the salt water in here, and then we're going to evaporate the water out. So I'll do the same for the other 2 and be right back. I'm going to use the hot plate so I can keep my eye on all 3 at once. So I have a hot plate for each of the liquids. They're all plugged in. We're keeping the cords away from the heat part itself. That ceramic part on the top is where it's hot, and there's dials on the side. So I'm going to turn them all on, power switches, and I'm going to set the heat relatively low. I'm going to set them at 3 because I have the time to wait. If we can let it evaporate slowly, it will be better. I'm going to have to keep my eye on them. When it gets really, really low, I can't let it boil completely dry because I could crack the beaker. So when it gets super low, I will shut them off and let them finish drying and just the air.